Hello everyone, this is your lecturer Hajirah Farooq, and today I will be summarizing the lectures for week 1, 2, and 3 for the module called Academic Skills and Studying with Confidence. The module code for this one is BMM 3113, and this one is for cohort 12, semester 1. So let's move on. So we started the first week with a positive note, and then we went on to discuss the email of the lecturer, which in this case was me. Um, and then we discussed the learning outcomes for this session, which was to use effective research techniques to find relevant and reliable information. And by the end of this session, the students were able to understand what does academic skill mean and how it is important. They were also able to explain what academic skills are, and they were also able to distinguish between reliable and unreliable sources. So we started off the discussion by the definition of academic skills, which are the traits and academic strategies that help you become a more professional student. They prepare you not only for your student life, but also for your career, to help you stay focused and motivated and to get you exposed to new ways of thinking and so much more. These skills are more than just innate. Then we discussed the different types of academic skills that exist. So there are quite a few, and some of them are note-taking, researching, exams, time management, essay writing, reading for information and understanding and interpreting that information, etc. After that, we uh, kind of evaluated the information sources that exist around us. We discussed about we had a little discussion where the students were supposed to list a few sources of information that they think that they can use to gather data for their assignment. And then we discussed the different sources of information that exist, such as books, academic publications, internet, TV, radio, podcasts, conference speeches, industry experts. And then we had a little class activity, a pair activity, where the students needed to discuss that which of these sources of information the students think are reliable and why. Then we discussed about the reliable sources that when researching, we always have to be sure that we are getting our information from reliable sources. And some of the sources are considered reliable because they have been written by people who are experts in their field, and these sources that you can trust. And on the other hand, there are some unreliable sources that we cannot trust, such as Wikipedia, because the authors may not have a thorough knowledge or a full understanding of the topic. And we always have to remember that anybody can post information on the internet, and we need to be very critical in order to determine what to believe and what not to believe. Then we had a little group activity where we discussed about the sources that can be regarded as unreliable to be used in the academic assignments. And then that was all about week 1. Moving on to the week 2. Let's make it into a slideshow. Okay, so week 2 started with the discussion of the first learning outcome again, which is how to use effective search techniques to find relevant and reliable information. And by the end of the session, the students were able to understand how to find the reliable information sources, identify whether sources are reliable or unreliable, understand the importance of note-taking, learning different note-taking techniques, and then take your own notes for the lesson. Um, so we started off with a little recap of the last week where we studied the reliable and unreliable sources of information. And we also discussed about what is this module and how will you be assessed and what are academic skills and how to distinguish between reliable and unreliable sources as mentioned earlier. Then we discussed about how to evaluate information sources with the prompt methodology. So the prompt methodology actually is an abbreviation for presentation, relevance, objectivity, method, provenance, and timeliness. And then we discussed about how to use that prompt methodology in further detail, and how to analyze which sources of information available out there can be regarded as reliable or unreliable. As you can see here, the discussion continues. It's a very extensive and detailed discussion. Then we had a group activity where the students were asked to do an assignment of inflation in UK, and if they were supposed to do that, then what kind of sources of information would they use? Then moving on to note taking. We discussed about note taking, that it is a systematic approach to processing the information presented to you, to the student, by scanning the main points or noting them down for future reference. Then we discussed that why it's important, because it helps the student to make sure that they are listening actively. It prevents lack of focus. It helps to reduce the study time, and also useful when preparing for assessments, and it can also boost your knowledge and skills of the topic. So then we watched a little video about note taking, and then the students were basically made to take notes of the important things that were mentioned in the video. And then we had another activity where the students were supposed to discuss with their colleagues that how can they improve their note-taking skills and what methods can they follow to take notes effectively. So then we discussed a few note-taking strategies, for example, Cornell method, outlining method, and mapping method. And then we watched another video about Cornell method, and we had a discussion about what the students understood. So here's a picture of how the Cornell method works. And then we discussed a little bit more about the Cornell method. There are 5 R's, which are record, reduce, recite, reflect, and review in the Cornell method. Then we watched another video about Cornell method, which is a Moodle activity as well. Then we discussed the outlining method, and after the outlining method, we discussed the mapping of web method as well. So is it just, then there was a question that can you take notes without listening? And the answer is a big no, no, no. It is, of course, not good enough or sufficient enough to just take notes. It's rather just not possible at all to take notes without listening carefully. So for being a good note taker, you have to be a good listener. And then there was another activity where the students were supposed to watch a video and take notes. And then they were supposed to write down what they learned that day, and the necessity of note taking and different methods of note taking. So that was all about the week 2. These are the list of references that we have taken the data for this lecture. And then lastly, we had the 3rd week. And in the 3rd week, we discussed about reference sources in the appropriate referencing style for the subject area. And by the end of this session, the students were able to explain what is academic integrity, and what is referencing, and what is the importance of referencing, and how to generate references based on APA referencing style. So first of all, we started off with the discussion of what is integrity and why is it so important. So academic integrity means being honest in your academic work. You need to formally recognize and reference the existing knowledge and ideas on which your work is based. If you do not acknowledge the work or ideas of others, you could be penalized for academic misconduct. Now, what is academic misconduct, you might think? So this happens when you breach academic integrity. So one of the most common types of academic misconduct is plagiarism. Plagiarism is basically presenting others' work or ideas as your own with or without consent of the original author, without full acknowledgement. This is where referencing is very, very important. Referencing means stating the source of information you used while producing your work. There are different referencing styles, so be careful about the format. The most commonly used one is Harvard, but the one that we use at LTU is APA 7 style for referencing. And why is referencing so important? Because referencing helps the students to avoid plagiarism. It also acknowledges the contribution of other writers and researchers in your work. It also helps to give credit and respect to the writers from whom you borrowed the ideas or data from, and it also allows the reader to trace the source of information you have used. So what is APA referencing? We learned this by watching a video, and then we learned about the in-text citations and the reference list. What are these two? What is the difference between these two, and what is the connection between these two? So these are basically two different parts of referencing. In-text citations are like short citations that you include within the written text, whereas the reference list is the uh, full detailed reference list, which is usually made at the end of the paper that you're writing. So we discussed that this is the way that we do in-text citation using the APA 7th format. And yeah, this is how it is done usually. And then we discussed there are two kinds of in-text citations. One is direct and one is indirect. And then we had a little class activity for the students where the students were supposed to create in-text citations for the sources provided to them via these QR codes. And then we watched another video about APA 7th style referencing in detail. And then we discussed the layout of the page and the order of referencing. Then we discussed about the different kinds of referencing that we need. So how do we do referencing for journal articles? Then there was another activity where the students were supposed to scan the QR code and generate the reference for the given journal article. Then we discussed how to reference for books, and then another activity, and then we had some answers that we discussed, and then we discussed how to reference websites, another activity, and then we taught the students about a website called Cite This For Me to create references in different styles. Um, so yeah, that was all about um, the week 1, 2, and 3 for academic skills for cohort 12, semester 1. I hope you enjoyed this video and you gathered some insights. For any further information about the module, this module or any other modules, you can log on to your Moodle and you can find plenty of information regarding your module over there. Thank you so very much for watching and listening.